I hadn't been back home for months. Deep down, I knew returning would hurt. Not because I was too busy to visit, but because I carried an invisible weight that seemed heavier with every step toward that door. Standing outside my parents' house in Charleston, the scent of magnolia mixed with salty air wrapped around me. It should have felt comforting, like I belonged there, but instead it felt like stepping into a carefully set trap. Before I even had the chance to knock, the door creaked open. My mother stood there, wearing that same flawless smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Honey, look at you," she chirped in a bright, controlled tone, careful not to smudge her lipstick as she leaned in and kissed the air beside my cheek. "You still look so serious. A little color wouldn't hurt, you know." I forced a faint smile and walked inside. My father barely acknowledged me, lifting his head just enough to offer a vague grunt, not even pretending to read the paper in his hands. Then there was Brooke, my younger stepsister, lounging on the sofa like she owned the entire house. She tapped her manicured nails against the armrest and gave me a slow, smug smile. Well, if it isn't the family's golden goose," she said sweetly. I tightened my fist behind my back and set my luggage down near the door. There was no point in responding. I already knew I wouldn't win. The dinner table was set beautifully, almost too perfectly, as if they were hosting someone important. But the atmosphere felt anything but welcoming. The clinking of glasses sounded too sharp, the scraping of cutlery too loud. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. My stomach twisted as I picked at my roast chicken. Halfway through dinner, Brooke cleared her throat dramatically, as if she were about to deliver life-changing news. Sitting up straighter, she said, "I've decided to celebrate my birthday this year. Just something small at the Grand Carlton." I blinked in disbelief. The Grand Carlton was one of the most expensive venues in the city. "Small," she said. She casually twirled her fork between her fingers. "I've already spoken to the event coordinator. It's about $220,000, but don't worry, Issa's got it covered." For a second, I thought I must have heard her wrong. I waited for my parents to laugh, to tell her she was being ridiculous. Instead, my mother's smile widened. "Isn't it exciting, darling?" she said. My father added without even looking at me, "After everything, your sister deserves something special. And you're doing well. It's nothing for you." My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. I carefully set my fork down, afraid my hands would betray me. "You already spoke with the event coordinator?" I asked slowly. "Of course," Brooke replied casually. "I told them you'd handle the payment." I looked at all of them, feeling something inside me crack. It wasn't just about the money. It was the assumption, the entitlement, the way they spoke as if it was already decided, like my only purpose was to fund their lives. Like I wasn't family, just a walking bank account. "No one asked me," I said quietly. "Oh, come on," my mother waved dismissively. "Don't be dramatic. It's just money. Family comes first." I pushed my chair back, the sound scraping loudly across the floor. Every part of me wanted to explode, to shout, to throw something, to finally say everything I had held in for years. But I didn't. Instead, I stood, smoothed my skirt, and forced a cold, controlled smile. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady. I walked out without looking back, my heels echoing against the polished floor. By the time I reached the porch, tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. They didn't deserve that. They had made it clear. To them, I was nothing more than a wallet with a pulse. And for the first time, I truly believed it. But I wasn't going to stay silent forever. Not anymore. I drove back to my house in silence, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The city blurred past me, neon lights, humid air, but I barely noticed any of it. I just wanted to erase that dinner from my memory. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had my own life, my career, my peace. But life had other plans. I just kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the couch when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Absent-mindedly, I picked it up. It was an Instagram notification. Brooke had posted a story. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something in my gut told me not to. I tapped it. A video played, slow, mocking, deliberate. It showed a small, worn-down house with chipped paint. My house. My old blue sedan sat in front, looking even worse under the harsh filter she had used. In the background, Brooke's sugary voice dripped with fake sympathy. Oh, bless her heart. She tries so hard to be independent. How adorable. The next clip began to play, while some of her friends laughed so hard they could barely catch their breath, dabbing tears from their perfectly done makeup. Crying laughing emojis floated all over the screen. The caption read, "When your older sister makes six figures but lives like it's still 1995. The comments were flooded with hundreds of laughing emojis, former classmates, distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all joining in as if I were some kind of public joke. I sat frozen, staring at my phone as anger simmered beneath my skin. I could feel exactly how they saw me, not as a person, not even as family, but as a prop in their performance, a target they could use to elevate themselves. A punching bag. My first instinct was to retaliate. I could have exposed everything, shared screenshots, revealed the truth, reminded everyone who had paid for Brooke's car, her college tuition, her endless shopping sprees. I could have humiliated her just as easily. But I didn't. Instead, I locked my phone, placed it face down, and took a slow, unsteady breath. If I reacted, they would win. That's exactly what they wanted, to provoke me, to paint me as bitter, jealous, and small. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. No, if this story was going to end, it would end on my terms. The next morning, I threw myself into work. I buried everything, anger, hurt, humiliation, under spreadsheets and deadlines, focusing only on the future I was building for myself. Without them, I told myself it was finished. Then around noon, there was a knock on my office door. I looked up, and my heart sank. My mother stood there, glowing with artificial warmth, dressed in elegance, holding a neatly wrapped loaf of banana bread like she was some kind of saint. She stepped inside without waiting for permission. "I thought you might like a little treat," she said brightly, placing it on my desk, as though it could erase everything. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap. "What do you want, Mom?" Her smile tightened for just a moment. Then she reached into her designer bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and set it beside the bread. I didn't need to open it. "I already know what that is," I said. "It's just a formality," she replied lightly. "Brooke needs to finalize the reservation at the Grand Carlton. They require proof of funds." I didn't move. "You just need to sign it," she added, tapping the envelope, "so they can charge your account directly." It wasn't a request. It was an expectation. They hadn't come to ask. They had come to inform me, as if I were nothing more than an ATM, and all they needed was the code. Something inside me cracked, slowly, deeply, permanently. Memories I had buried long ago surged back all at once. Being 8 years old, sick on a school trip, throwing up into a trash can while my mother whispered harshly, "Do you have any idea how much this costs us?" Being 12, asking for basketball shoes, only to be told, "We've sacrificed enough for you. Don't ask for more." Being 17, offered a full scholarship to a university far away, and staying close out of guilt because they needed me. It had never been about love. It had always been about obligation. And in their minds, I would never repay what they believed I owed. I looked at her perfect hair, polished nails, and that banana bread sitting there like a hollow peace offering. "No," I said quietly. Her smile faltered. "I'm not signing anything." I continued, my voice calm, almost eerily steady. "I'm not paying for Brooke's party, and I'm not explaining myself." For the first time, I saw it. Fear. It flickered in her eyes before she quickly hid it again. I picked up the banana bread and dropped it into the trash beside my desk. Then I slid the envelope in after it. "This ends now," I said. She stared at me for a long moment, speechless. Then she turned sharply and walked out without another word. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. 2 days later, I allowed myself to think it might truly be over. I had drawn the line. I had made myself clear, but I should have known better. It was a humid Tuesday afternoon, the sound of lawnmowers buzzing outside my office window, when a new email appeared in my inbox. No subject line, just an attachment. A strange sense of dread crept up my spine as I opened it. It was a contract from Dylan Morris, the assistant to Brooke's fiancé, and buried within the polished legal language and official-looking formatting was a trap. A quiet, calculated clause stating that if Brooke failed to cover the cost of her birthday celebration, the full amount would automatically be charged to me. No warning, no hearing, no consent, just a direct withdrawal from my accounts. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening into knots. They had gone behind my back. They had set this up knowing I had already refused. I didn't shout. I didn't call them. I didn't react at all. I simply closed the document, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling. They thought they were clever. They thought I would panic, too overwhelmed, too ashamed, too emotional to fight back. They thought they had already won. What they didn't realize was that they had just made their biggest mistake. What they failed to understand was that the version of me they had raised, the girl they had blamed, controlled, and shaped, had disappeared long ago. If they were looking for a fight, they would get one. But it wouldn't be loud or chaotic. It would be quiet, strategic, and it would strike exactly where it mattered most. That night, I stayed late at the hotel. Windmill House wasn't just a workplace. It was my second home, my real home, if I was being honest. The building had settled into nighttime silence. The hallways were dim, and the only sound was the distant hum of the kitchen staff finishing their cleanup. I sat in my office with Anna, my operations manager. She had been with me since the beginning, loyal, sharp, and far more perceptive than most people realized. I told her everything, sparing no detail, no matter how humiliating. When I finished, she slowly shook her head, her blonde curls bouncing lightly. "They're playing a dirty game," she said calmly. "But they made one mistake." "What's that?" I asked, drained. "You own this place," she replied simply, "and they left evidence everywhere." I frowned. "Explain." Anna pulled up the reservation system on her tablet. There it was, clear and undeniable. The booking confirmation for the grand ballroom, the largest space in the hotel, reserved under Brooke's name. Without my approval, without a deposit, without any discussion. They made the reservation without permission? I asked, my voice tightening. "Yes," Anna confirmed. "They used your name and credentials to push it through. And Dylan's assistant emailed the events team pretending to represent your office. We have IP logs. We have the emails." I leaned back in my chair, stunned, almost impressed. They had orchestrated everything so carefully. If they had invested even half this effort into their own lives, they wouldn't need to depend on mine. Anna gave a slow, knowing smile. "We document everything," she said. "Every unauthorized booking, every email, every call log. We build a case so solid they won't be able to escape it." "And then?" I asked. She closed the tablet with quiet confidence. "Then we pull everything out from under them at the worst possible moment." I nodded slowly, something cold and steady settling inside me. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. No more guilt. No more hesitation. The moment they decided my life, my work, and my money belonged to them, they had started this. Now it was my turn to finish it. The morning of Brooke's big party arrived, thick with heat and the promise of storms rolling in from the coast. I sat at my desk in Windmill House, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, my eyes fixed on the security monitors. What was supposed to be a small gathering had turned into chaos overnight. Vendors poured in with towering arrangements of flowers, crates of champagne, and stacks of gold-rimmed tableware. Staff rushed from one task to another, struggling to meet impossible demands. And Brooke, my sister, stood at the center of it all, issuing orders like a tyrant. Through one of the screens, I watched her snap at the receptionist over the floral arrangements. "Peonies," she barked. "Peonies, not these wilted weeds." With a violent motion, she knocked a bouquet worth hundreds of dollars on the floor. Moments later, she stormed into the ballroom, snapping her fingers at waiters, scolding the event coordinator so harshly that the poor girl's hands began to shake. Even without turning up the volume, I could see everything clearly. This wasn't just demanding behavior. It was cruelty. And I sat there, silent, recording it all. Every insult, every violation, every act of disrespect toward my staff, toward my real family at Windmill House. Anna stood beside me, marking timestamps, extracting footage, saving everything into a secure file. "Do you have enough to shut this down 3 times over?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I simply nodded, once slow and certain. They thought they could step into my world and treat it like their playground. They thought they could humiliate me in silence while celebrating loudly. But they had forgotten one critical detail. They were standing on my ground. The final straw came just 1 hour before the event was set to begin. Brooke cornered one of the newest waiters, a kind, nervous kid, barely 19, and dumped a tray of hors d'oeuvres all over his uniform simply because she didn't like the way he smiled. I watched it happen. Then, without a word, I slowly closed my laptop. I rose to my feet, smoothing my dress with hands that trembled slightly, but remained steady. It was time. I moved through the hotel corridors like a shadow. No one noticed me. They were all too busy dealing with the last-minute chaos. I slipped down a side hallway and climbed the wide staircase leading to the grand ballroom. Our most luxurious space, meant for nights people were supposed to remember forever. I reached the top just as guests began to arrive. Brooke's future in-laws were already there, wealthy, refined, and clearly proud. I recognized Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence instantly from photographs. Composed, elegant, and not the type to tolerate childish outbursts. Beckham Lawrence, Brooke's fiancé, stood awkwardly near the champagne table, adjusting his cufflinks nervously. And Brooke, she floated around the room like royalty in a glittering gold gown, tossing her hair, laughing too loudly, playing the part perfectly. It might have been convincing if you didn't know what lay beneath the surface. I waited. I waited until the room filled, until the music softened, until every gaze naturally drifted toward the grand staircase. Then, without a word, I stepped forward. Silence fell instantly, so complete you could hear the faint hum of the lights. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need drama. I simply stood there, calm, composed. "Good evening," I said firmly. "My name is Isla Whitaker." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. I allowed it, offering a small, controlled smile. "I am the owner of Windmill House," I continued, "and I'd like to personally welcome you to my hotel." For a moment, no one spoke. Then confusion spread across the room. Brooke's expression twisted, first puzzled, then horrified. I watched the color drain from her face as the realization hit her. This was my domain. She wasn't in control here. She was trespassing. I let my gaze sweep across the room, pausing briefly on Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, who now looked visibly unsettled. Then I continued, calm and precise. "Unfortunately," I said, allowing a deliberate pause, "due to multiple violations, including unauthorized bookings, breaches of contract, and unacceptable treatment of staff, this event is hereby canceled, effective immediately." A collective gasp filled the room. Brooke stumbled forward, her hands shaking. "You can't do this. I'm family." I tilted my head slightly. "No," I replied softly. "You are a guest, and guests are expected to behave accordingly." At that moment, 2 uniformed security guards stepped quietly into position at the edges of the ballroom. Calm, respectful, but firm. Brooke turned desperately toward Beckham, searching for support. But he wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at me. And in his eyes, I saw something unexpected: respect, admiration, maybe even regret. Nearby, his parents stiffened, exchanging quiet words. Their expressions toward Brooke shifted, from mild disapproval to unmistakable disgust. I gave a subtle signal to the staff. They moved efficiently, escorting guests out, dimming the atmosphere, silencing the music. And Brooke, she stood frozen in the center of the once glittering ballroom, furious, humiliated, utterly alone. I turned and walked away, my heels echoing softly against the marble floor. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't begged. I hadn't lowered myself to her level. I had simply allowed the truth to do what it always does. Once you stop protecting the wrong people, I let burn. The hallway outside the ballroom was eerily quiet, broken only by the sound of Brooke's sobbing. I didn't need to look back to picture it. Her collapsing to the floor, mascara streaking her cheeks, fists clenched in helpless rage. In a single moment, she had lost everything. The party, the approval of her future in-laws, the perfect image she had so carefully constructed. But I didn't stop. I didn't kneel beside her. I didn't offer comfort, sympathy, or even a glance. I walked past her, head held high, my heart steady for the first time in years. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. She had made her choices. Now she would live with them. Outside, the night air was cool, the sky filled with stars, the faint scent of rain lingering in the distance. It felt like breathing again after being underwater for far too long. I didn't expect what came next. The following morning, as I reviewed reservations at my desk, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and froze. "Dad." I let it ring for a while. Then, finally, I answered. "Issa," he said, his voice rough, strained. I heard what happened. I said nothing. Waiting. He exhaled heavily. "Don't take it any further, okay? Brooke's been through enough." There it was. The truth I had always known, but never fully accepted. It had never been about fairness. Never about doing what was right. It had always been about keeping the peace, protecting the golden child, no matter the cost. I could have argued. I could have pleaded for him to finally see me. But I didn't. "Goodbye, Dad," I said quietly, and hung up. And just like that, without drama or ceremony, the final thread connecting me to them snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Anna would have been there for me, like always, but I didn't even call her. I sat in silence for a while, and slowly, I realized something surprising. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Instead, there was lightness, relief, freedom. 2 weeks later, Windmill House was thriving. Word had spread quickly that the owner valued integrity over profit, that she stood up for her staff. High-profile clients began reaching out. Conferences, luxury weddings, corporate retreats. Opportunity after opportunity. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold, I received an email. From Dad. 5 lines. No excuses. No arguments. Just, "I'm sorry for how." It doesn't come from apologies or victories. It comes from walking away, without needing them to change, to understand, or to give permission. I shut my laptop, stepped out onto the balcony, and looked out over the city glowing with life and possibility. I took a deep breath and smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I had chosen myself. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been used, mocked, excluded, or made to feel small by people who should have cared for you, you don't need their approval to know your worth. You're more than what you give. You can walk away. You can build something better. Real peace comes from leaving stronger, not from staying and fighting. Did you enjoy the story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. See you next time.